This episode is brought to you by our Patreon supporters. Become a patron today at patreon.com/into the portal.
Hello, and welcome back into the portal. I'm Amber Ray.
And I'm Andrew McKay.
And we're back with another Film Friday.
We are. Welcome back, everyone.
Yes, thank you for joining us. This week we had a little change of plans.
Yeah.
We're actually going to be talking about a movie called Annihilation today.
Yeah, you say that with a little more pizzazz.
Annihilation.
Dun, dun, dun.
Like
definitely, we slotted it in.
Definitely
Okay. So clear, right? Yeah. We were going to do the Wailing. It didn't happen this week. We're going to save it for next week. But we do have we wanted to give you guys a little message here off the top.
Yeah.
Go ahead, Amber.
Well, we have enjoyed every single film we've done thus far.
Definitely.
But we did start this during Halloween, and I feel like some people were really latched onto that and horror in particular. Not to say that, because like out of the two of us, I'd say I'm more the horror person. As far as interests go. But we are totally open to things that are a little lighter as well.
Definitely.
Anything that has a paranormal sort of twinge to it or anything like that.
Yeah, like we were just joking about this earlier, right? Like just how we started it during Halloween, and it's kind of just been like a roller coaster of emotions for me, especially because, like Amber said, like she's been kind of the more of the horror movie buff in this relationship over the years, and I've been,
it's dense, it's
dark,
it's heavy sometimes.
Sometimes it gets pretty heavy,
and I think I scared us off of doing the Wailing this week because I was saying how it's like it basically is one of those movies that's really intense and it makes like North American horror look just like clunky.
That's the part about it that I don't think I was quite prepared for this week, and not to mention that it didn't work out time wise to watch it, but so we're going to do it justice next week. But the fact that it's a foreign film, and I'm just like, I don't even know what to expect. How crazy could this be? Like, sometimes it's just off kilter with what we're used to, right? And
totally.
That's what's so cool about them, but also, like, I don't know.
I kind of wanted to give us more time to prep for that one, too.
Totally.
So timing didn't work out this week, and by the time we actually had a moment that we could have watched it, my eyes were so tired I wouldn't be able to watch the subtitles. So
yeah, exactly.
It was kind of one of those things. But anyways, getting on to the topic of today. Mm-hmm. Annihilation, 2018. I had never heard about this movie until this week.
No.
We just stumbled across it on Netflix. So we can't really credit anyone. It's not a listener suggested, but Natalie Portman, man, you can't pass that up.
It kind of just happened, and it was meant to be.
Yeah, exactly. And this is a really interesting thing. It's actually based on a book trilogy by a man named Jeff Vandermeer, and I'm assuming this movie in particular was just part one. And so I'm really hoping that they'll do two other parts to kind of, or I'm just going to have to read the trilogy. I don't know.
Yeah.
But anyways, it took us for a ride, and it was a great ride. Like, it was
definitely.
I loved it, to be honest.
Yeah, like to give an answer of whether or not I'd recommend it right off the bat, I would. It caught me off guard. Like, I don't even know. Like, I love Natalie Portman. She's a great actress. Like,
super
Black
talented.
Swan, V for Vendetta, like so many awesome movies, right? She's done a few that I didn't love. So, and like all actors, right? Actors and actresses.
What was it, that Crazy Stupid Love movie or something?
Oh, well, sure. She's dabbled in that realm too. Yeah, like the romantic comedies and stuff. But no, this one, I wasn't sure quite what to expect from her. Mm-hmm. But it was good. It was well done. Yeah,
it was really good. So let's give a brief little synopsis here. So essentially the plot of this film revolves around a young biologist, and we basically find her in the throes of kind of one of this very confusing and deceptive sort of inexplicable phenomena known as the shimmer. So the opening of the film finds Lena, which is her character name, in an interrogation room. It's a very sort of stark setting, and she's basically being examined by a man who's dressed in a hazmat suit. It's very contained. She's very separated from them. And essentially what we learned is that her husband and all the rest of the members of her expedition that she was just on are essentially missing.
Right.
And that basically what we see in the opening sequence of the film is him returning. And it's very creepy. It reminds me of like a post UFO abduction, right? Where he just finds himself outside the house. He doesn't have anything. He's just wearing the clothes on his back.
Yeah.
That's it. He walks up the stairs. It's a very, I don't even know, like it's so dark, right? And so ominous and just creepy. And she's actually in the middle of mourning him because she thinks he's gone forever. Right. And essentially he returns. He has no memory of who he is or even what happened to him. He doesn't know any of it. And so this convinces Lena that she must return to the Shimmer to save her husband and even perhaps the rest of humanity.
Essentially, yeah.
Yeah.
And obviously that's kind of like the jumbled intro there.
Exactly.
But they do that back and forth between like the present and the past. And then they start with that right from the beginning. So yeah, it starts off in this quarantined interrogation room, and then very quickly it's her and her normal life at Johns Hopkins as a biology professor,
right,
researching cancer cells and stuff like that, right? And movies like this always do that. Like we watched Arrival not that long ago, and it's very similar. It's this back and forth, and it's like a professional woman in this case trying to go about her normal life or whatever, you know what I mean?
Actually, that's a really good point. I forgot about that juxtaposition between that first scene and then when we do see her giving a lecture at this university, and it's exactly, you nailed it. It's the replication of the cell, the mutation of the cell is what she's getting at, and they're basically going to be following a case study. And so it goes from that to essentially, well, it jumps back to her almost in mourning, right? Where she's mourning the loss of her husband. She's painting the house, right? Doing typical things that people do when they're grieving. And then he returns. Right. And it's very off-putting is the least that I can say about that. Definitely. There's that scene in the kitchen. And it's that's odd. What do you have? What are your thoughts on that scene there?
Well, I have there's sort of a theory I have for the whole movie about that ties to that first scene. I'm going to come back to that, but yeah, no, it was very strange because obviously he just kind of appeared, and so you're left to wonder. It's like, well, it's not as if he just because he makes that comment. He's like, I was outside, and she's like, outside the house, and he's like, no, outside the room. And it was like he was just some other place, and next thing he knew, he was looking through a door, and he's like, I recognized you. And she was like, what? Like, that's weird. Yeah, no shit. How could you not recognize me? I'm your wife.
Yeah, exactly.
And at that moment, she realizes something's not right, and then you get that. I love that scene, that part there where he takes a sip of, he's like, it doesn't matter. Because she's like, oh, I've been mourning you for almost a year. And he's like, it doesn't matter. And then he takes a sip of water, puts it back down, and then there's that close-up on the glass, and there's just that little bit of blood kind of diffusing out into the water, and he's just like, I don't feel well. And then like a split second later, it's the ambulance, like chaos, rushing to the hospital.
Yeah, because he's obviously in some sort of
so that was a really good transition.
Mortal terror there. Right I actually have more thoughts on that scene, too, because that is definitely a very important scene, right? It's it solidifies a lot of the themes and a lot of what's to come, right? And I had some thoughts on, in particular, his expression or just the opaque nature of his face. You actually can't see his eyes. It's just these black, like sunken holes, essentially, because of the lighting is so dim in the kitchen. You see a lot of separation, right? She's on the opposite side of the room to him. She is definitely distancing herself from him at this point because she's not getting that reciprocation of feeling, right? You know what I mean? She's like, this is not right. Right. And then you get the scene, the moment, right, where she sits down with him and that she's trying to work it through, right? And she's like, okay, tell me about that. And that's when he says that, right? He's like, I was outside the door to the bedroom. So he doesn't even remember actually walking into the house. No. So that to me kind of speaks to just a lack of memory or disapparation of memory, perhaps, where it's like you're living in this momentary reality. Yeah. And then it's interesting because right as soon as he says that, obviously that's the most bizarre thing he's said thus far, and she takes her hands off of his. She again reaffirms a separation of sorts, like a lack of understanding, and you see that scene all through the glass of water.
Yeah.
And that's a hugely significant thing, I think, because you're getting that refraction.
Right.
And that, I think, refraction, mutation, hybridization, that obviously is a huge component to this movie.
Yeah.
So I think that you see repetitions of that in various forms, whether it's through glass and water or just through glass, like tinted glass. It's all these like interesting sort of, exactly that, where it's like you're seeing through the looking glass.
Absolutely.
Kind of
and seeing something different by looking through the looking glass. And
Totally.
like throughout the whole movie, they're battling with whether or not this is something bad. Right?
Exactly.
But it's just something they don't understand.
Exactly.
So,
Totally. Okay, wait. So even just on that note, before we move into other things here, this idea that, is that sort of an analogy, this is the thought I had, is it an analogy for exactly that, the refraction of their DNA, their cells, all this stuff, because as soon as they enter the shimmer, they are essentially a part of that, where they are being refracted by energy beams of whatever sort, whatever it is. It's like this iridescent shimmer.
Well, let's get to the shimmer. So, like, how does it even get there? You know what I mean?
Yeah.
This part was kind of crazy because I actually think I, like, walked over to get a glass of water at this part and missed the
You kind of did, even though I rewinded it. I rewinded like 3 times.
Happened. But, yeah, there was, like, it's alien in origin by definition, because it's there's a meteor crash. And this is this is on like the West Coast.
I'm assuming. I'm honestly not sure. That could be like the Gulf Coast too.
Right. It's in the US, obviously.
Definitely.
And it's sort of centered around this crash happens near the coast and near a lighthouse, which ends up being sort of
hits the lighthouse.
You're right. And it's like, but the lighthouse keeper like was the first person to like report this strange, as he was the one who described it as a shimmer, and that name kind of stuck, I think is how they kind of explained it in the movie or whatever.
Yeah.
And then it starts to grow. So this meteor crashes, this strange, I mean, there is no better word for it other than shimmer. Like, I guess, shimmer, like, it looks like a bubble, like when a kid blows a big bubble and it's got that kind of, like, Pink Floyd rainbow color going on through it, because it's a prism, right?
Iridescent.
Yeah, exactly. And it starts to grow quite rapidly. And so they end up building, it's kind of crazy, right? The government response. They, like, build, like, this massive facility on the outskirts and, of course, have all these, it's exactly like the movie Arrival in a way. Where they have, like, all the, similar, all the equipment and military personnel, and they're sort of just edging back further and further as it comes closer and closer to them, and they don't know what it is.
Yeah, totally. So, that's exactly it. No one knows what it is. It is incredibly, like, visually beautiful and captivating in a sense, and I think that's part of its power, too. And I kind of likened it to a matrix of sorts. And, like, a matrix defined as in an environment or material in which something develops, a surrounding medium or a structure of sorts. So that's kind of what we see, right? It's an expansion of something. And within that enclosed area, you're getting, like, exactly what we said, like, mutations, just alterations and dissolutions to a certain extent. And that's where you kind of get the name Annihilation, right? Because you're essentially losing yourself in everything else. You're losing your egocentric identity. And then you just become a part of everything, is kind of how it looks, right? Or you get like amalgamations of different creatures and stuff.
Right. But isn't that an interesting... isn't it interesting, the title, then, to think of it that way? Like, we can come back to that at the end. But this idea of annihilation, when you hear that word, you think, like, Bruce Willis Armageddon. Like, you think, like, nuclear war,
violent.
Like, you know, like, Independence Day, like, you need Will Smith to get in a spaceship.
Too.
Like, you don't think of a transitionary thing where it's, like, where it's just about not understanding what's even happening. You know what I mean? Understanding
and then just letting go. It's almost like this interesting, weird thing where it's... Yeah, exactly that.
I've got another really interesting point on that. I think it's interesting, but I'm gonna save it. A little juicy tidbit. Let's go
into some of these examples then, because I thought some of these were really cool.
Definitely.
We came across a few different things, like the duplicated deer running through the woods. So essentially it was like almost like a mirrored image of like this silvery, it almost looks like a Patronus or something, right, from Harry Potter.
Oh yeah, it definitely does.
And it has like these very weird aspects to it. I thought that was cool.
Yeah, and they're running in perfect
in unison.
Yeah.
It's like a mirror, right? And then that's exactly what happens to her later on at like the kind of the climax of the film, where she faces herself, or like her other self.
We're not really sure exactly.
I don't think it's actually her, but I think it's something that's like mimicking her.
Right.
That's a huge part about it too, is mimicry. And like this weird sort of like how these blends occur and how different parts of those kind of come out.
Yeah.
But I thought, okay, one of my favorite ones, I know you're probably going to choose the really cool one, so I went for the one that's like, but I really like the flowers. I love the flowers. I love the way they resembled human structures. It was like, that was interesting, because then it's kind of like a bipolar sort of like junction, you know what I mean? It's just the two parts. So you get the animal plant structure and you get the reminiscent human frame where they're all just like they're like statues.
Bizarre.
It's so creepy, man. And then later on you get, once the shimmer's gone, you see what was actually there, and it was just graves.
Yeah, which is interesting. Which but that's curious too then, because it's almost like, was it like a hallucination in a way, because
really.
they just but I mean, like, obviously those were plants within it, right, that presumably grew out of the
but they needed that
bodies,
medium,
right?
They needed the matrix to actually be.
That's a whole other can of worms to address then in this too, you know what I mean?
Because
so essentially, like, at this point we've got Lena, she's the main character. She's her husband's come back, but he's super duper messed up.
Yeah.
She gets taken into so that she's on the way to the hospital with him. Like Secret Service or whatever, like, pull them over, take them, blah blah blah, whatever, right? So now she's joined this group because she's basically like she's sort of a quasi prisoner in a way, because she knows too much, kind of, right? But she's a biologist, so she joins this group. They're in there. So did we say this character list? So she's with Dr. Ventress, which is the sort of coordinator of the expeditions.
Exactly. She's kind of, the brains of the operation.
Right? You've got a paramedic from Chicago. Her name's...
I think that was Anya.
Anya?
She's the one that goes kind of nuts, right?
Yeah. And then you have a physicist and...
I can't remember the other one. Was a microbiologist?
Something like that.
Josie.
Yeah. So they're heading in there. They're all kind of...
All-female cast.
All-female cast. Which is interesting. That's really cool, actually. Didn't really pick up on that.
Yeah.
And then I believe it's the character Josie makes the comment about how they're all damaged goods, and that's why they're volunteering for this crazy expedition, right? You know, you don't volunteer for something that no one's come back from unless you're like have nothing really better going on.
Yeah.
And I thought it was really interesting. They walk into the shimmer. They walk through, and it's all pretty normal, other than the fact that it's like they just walked into like a tropical environment, which is kind of strange because where they were a few meters before didn't seem to be.
It's just like boggy swampland before the coast.
And the first night they go to sleep, and they wake up the next morning and they've lost time. That was weird. They never really came back to that at all throughout the rest of their journey.
I forgot about that.
But they woke up and they were like, we only have enough supplies left. Judging by our supplies, it looks like we've been out here for 6 days. Or something along those lines. Even though it was their first night.
And then she remarks later on that she doesn't recall ever eating.
They didn't recall... none of them remembered anything after walking in. They wake up the next morning and they're all like, yep, does anyone remember anything? That's weird.
Yeah.
So it's like either they just, I don't know, they're operating differently just by entering, or their actual, like,
it's already started.
Their brains have literally started to move around.
Yeah.
Which is such an interesting thing about this movie.
Yeah, that's really creepy. That's really funny, though, to come back to that point, at the human side of these characters and how they all are, like, damaged goods, right? And how that one night, Lena and Cass, they kind of have their little bonding session of their pain and whatever and their loss and all this stuff. And then Cass is the one that actually ends up getting murked first by... seemingly an invisible animal that turns out to be none other than like a hybrid goat bear thing.
It's weird.
That's
looking
effing messed up.
Yeah.
And it has her voice because it killed her.
Yeah.
And she became, in her last moments, her last terrified moments of being alive, when she's screaming, "Help me!" That's the part that gets transferred into this. And so we have that scene, that beautiful scene where essentially they're all tied up in the chairs because that chick Anya's gone crazy.
Yeah.
And they're all tied up and they hear the monster outside. And it just, you hear the "help me!" and it sounds like a woman screaming. So Anya runs out, gets presumably whatever, like injured or whatever. She's out trying to find it. And then the creature comes in and is just like breathing down their necks essentially and just says it so quietly, "Help me," again. And it's
super
her voice.
creepy.
It's so creepy, man. And I honestly think that they weren't attacked, A, because, like they said, they weren't responding. They were completely still. But B, because I think that there was a part of Cass that was a little bit more restrained. She was, like, actually trying to communicate with them that she was in there, probably. That's kind of how it came across to me, because it was a very extended scene. Like, why the heck would that thing be there? You know what I mean? Like, for that long.
Right.
Unless it is just really just trying to wait them out and see who's going to make a move, who's going to run, who's going to be the bait. I don't know. I thought that was a really interesting point, though.
Right.
I thought that was going to be your favorite as far as, like, the hybrid animals.
Definitely.
You didn't jump on that one.
Yeah, no, I don't know. Definitely really, it's interesting because it's like, why was it a hybrid, like, why did it look to be like, like bear, goat, this, that, and the other thing, instead of just like we saw earlier, like a double of a deer? You know what I mean? Like, it's like almost, it's just what things are in proximity to, they end up becoming more of that. Like, here's the way I'm picturing this. It's almost like a metaphysical vivisection in a way. You know what I mean? Like, so like vivisection is literally like
the taking and rearranging of a living animal's organs and parts. And,
so like picture the island of Dr. Moreau, right?
Yeah.
But this is like kind of what's happening, but they don't understand why. Like, Anya makes that comment that her skin, her fingerprints were moving. Like her fingerprints were like slithering around her fingers. And things are starting to literally physically move. She can see, like, they're starting to be able to see it.
It's almost like it's becoming the shimmer.
Right. So it's like whatever this shimmer is literally, because of course you can't get, because you just said like they come across plants shaped like humans. That's not possible, right? No. In our world as we know it now. You can't she makes the comment like you can't crossbreed a bear and a goat.
No.
You can't do that. But in the shimmer, it doesn't matter because the DNA of both are basically, like, I picture it being like confetti tossed up into the air, and then it all can kind of blend together. It's like a metaphysical vivisection of DNA. It's taking out bits and pieces of this, that, and the other thing and fitting it together, and it works. You can't get that in our regular world where it's like, you know, things mate and produce something.
And I think it's almost because of that refraction. It's like a prism, right? Where all this stuff exists and is able to be mutated just like that because of these conditions, this matrix kind of a scenario we got here. But as far as that goes too, like that was an interesting point you made as far as like the plants are gone after. I don't know, maybe I'm misinterpreting that, but that was what I thought I saw. But if you do want to go that far and say like, okay, well the shimmer's gone, therefore ergo all the weird things in it were gone too, that doesn't really make sense because of the ending, right? And the fact that those two managed to exist and make it out. So before we kind of get to that, I think, are we getting to the climax of the film now? Kind of, we've gone to the point where, okay, so we discussed the scene where the bear goat kind of attacks, takes Anya away, and leaves essentially the three left. So we've got Josie, we've got Lena, and we've got Dr. Ventress. Dr. Ventress, right? Such a weird name. Ventress. That's like, it sounds like Ventana, like window, right? Like, is she a portal? Because essentially she kind of becomes one in a way in the very end. Anyways, that's a side note. But so essentially we get the three of them. Dr. Ventress is like, screw this, I'm just gonna keep going. I want to get to the coast. I want to get to this place. And then you get the dissolution of the group because Josie essentially just wanders away and disappears into the shimmer. A very natural way of I think she just kind of relinquished herself to it. Did. And she just wanted...
She wanted a peaceful ending, right?
Yeah.
Because she's the one who came up with that thing that Cass got stuck in the bear. That, like, her dying soul and DNA morphed into that. And she's like, I don't want that to happen to me.
No.
Like, literally, I think that's what she said.
Yeah, and she was, like, picking flowers and, like, incorporating them into her skin, like, into her hand, it looked like, right? Yeah. She was, like, playing around with it before she kind of made her decision. And so then you get Lena essentially chasing after Dr. Ventress. And she reaches the lighthouse. And... shit gets cray. Let's just say.
Yeah, if it hasn't already. I mean, yeah.
Exactly.
It gets worse.
It's so confusing because for me, I assumed she was going to go to the top of the lighthouse. I just assumed it was going to be a climb. It was going to be an ascension. And instead, it's not. It's into the belly. It's into the pit. Exactly, a descent.
Right.
So that part to me, so it's almost like she's entering the womb. And then she meets up with Dr. Ventress after the whole, like, shocking video footage that she comes across, right? Of her husband essentially killing himself.
No.
Or was that himself? Was it him or was it?
No. He was. He was filming. That was weird too, because the guy that he was filming looked a lot like him. It was his like partner, one of the people in his crew.
I see. Okay.
Obviously, right? Because that confused me for a second too. I was like, wait a second, is he like dead and then reincarnated in some way or something? And that's who's outside of the shimmer?
I thought it was his double that was the outside.
Yeah, no. It was showing him basically. Film. Because I recognized because the guy who blew himself up had like a deep Southern accent. So it was like totally different person, but they looked really similar.
So and was it her husband? Okay,
yeah,
man, that changes things for me. Changes my conclusions.
But I mean, that was a creepy scene, right? Because he's sitting there and he's like, my skin moves like water, like my mind, like
isn't my own,
isn't my own, and I just can't bear it.
So that's just it. There's a difference, right, between the people that fight it and the people that accept it and want it. Like, especially between Lena and Dr. Ventress, right? Because Josie makes the comment, he's like, she's going to meet it, you're going to fight it, I don't want either.
Right.
And then that's when she walks away.
Yeah.
And so Ventress basically submits herself to it. She's like, just take me away. And then she becomes something really weird. Like, she becomes a metal monster thing, or a statue. Like, she's just there.
Yeah, it's bizarre.
She gets disapparated and then re-amalgamated into something.
Right. Well, that's just it. Okay, so what has happened here? Like, a meteor comes down. Obviously, there's something in it, on it, or it isn't a meteor at all.
Or it's a contaminant.
Else. Yeah, exactly, right?
It's
like, there's something. Yeah, exactly. It's contaminated the area somehow. But Lena saves the day, right? Like, she finds one of the grenades that was left behind from the previous group. And she has this weird back and forth where it seems like it's almost like a couple of days where she's like fighting this weird, almost metallic double, faceless, super creepy.
And it mirrors her and mimics her.
But it won't let her, it almost completely mimics her, but then also lets her give it the grenade, which is odd.
And she makes a point of saying to the guy that's interviewing her after that it wasn't fighting her, she started it. She fought it. And then as soon as she stopped, it stopped. And it was like, as soon as she was like, exactly that. It was a mimic of her emotional reaction and physical reaction. Because she gets slammed up against the door. Yeah. And the harder she fights against it, the more it's pushing back on her. If she just didn't fight it, maybe it would let her go. You know what I mean? And so she learns that the 2 times she has to learn that.
Right.
And then the final time, the round 3.
Yeah,
she
so
makes it out.
You are just left to wonder if it is just partly this weird mirrored dimension, or if it's more than just that, more than just like the 50-50 mirror. It's like this maybe is an entity in and of itself, but because of the nature in which it exists and how it's been brought to this circumstance, like in the shimmer, it's like it is her, but it isn't her. You know what I mean?
Oh, you mean like the version that comes out of the shimmer? Or the version that's in there with her, the double.
The double. Right. Like that, it literally is her.
Yeah.
But just not in the dimension that they're in when she's fighting it. I don't even know. Obviously, I'm getting twisted around here. Because it's super strange. We don't know what it is. You're left to wonder if it's purely alien, and this is like some sort of just weird mimicry. Or if this is something interdimensional, which clearly it is. Because
it's both.
There's this weird... Like,
it messes with time, it messes with space, it messes with physics.
Physics is the main one, right? Because our DNA comes down to that, like just how we're constructed, the shape of things, and how things move around, how the electrons move around the atom, and how everything works. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
We need physicist Chris.
We need physicist Chris on here. So let's get to the very ending then. So we get the implosion, essentially, of the lighthouse and of the shimmer, and everything kind of like comes in on itself and goes back to seemingly normal. You get Lena being led, essentially, to visit her husband, who isn't her husband, really, and they've both kind of being converted. And one thing we didn't mention, this is kind of funny, we were talking about amalgamations, mutations, hybrids. These are all essentially chimeras, right? Like, it's...
In a way.
That's all one of the same, I guess, is what I'm trying to say. But, okay, this last scene that we get with Lena, where she asks him, are you like my husband?
He says, Cain?
Are you... Yeah, exactly. He says, no.
He says, I don't think so.
He says, I don't think so.
Are you Lena?
Are you the one they call Lena? And she says, yes. And then they kind of like have this moment where they hug. Like he goes to hug her, interestingly. So he initiates. And then you get her hugging back kind of slowly. And you get the shimmer in both of their eyes. So you see that silver kind of come out.
Right.
And then the final scene that you see is the camera panning away. And it's through the glass again.
Right. Yeah.
So again, a continuation of that. It's through the looking glass. What are we seeing? Are we really seeing what we're seeing? You know what I mean? Like there's this whole weird question of that.
You know, that to me is like such a scary thought to like try to, you know, it's hard. You can't empathize. You can't put yourself in that position. But like the idea of just having some inkling of knowing that you like love something, but that you're not sure or something. You know what I mean? Like just that question, like, are you Kane? I'm not sure. Like, are you Lena? Like, that's just bizarre. You know what I mean? Like, and then, yeah, like, he goes in for that hug, and that's just feeling that, like, there is some memory here, but it's not, doesn't quite make sense. And a lot of this ties into...
Partial.
Once again, spoiler alert for The Thing. Go watch them, because the sequel came out in 2011. But there's a lot of crossover here, too, like, in my opinion, because it's this idea of memory being embedded in DNA.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
Yeah,
because
exactly.
his you know, because they're all scrambled up.
So he has parts of it, but he doesn't have it all.
Right? And then that's where we get that thing to come back to the beginning, like I was going to say, I said I would. He makes that comment, like, I recognized you. And she gets all weirded out. And then now she knows because she's changed too. I recognized you. My memory of you was in this scrambled brain, scrambled DNA. Super, super bizarre.
Ugh. This was this was definitely a mind twister of a film.
And like I said before, too, the proximity thing. So, like, the bear takes on weird things because of whatever it was in proximity to. When they first come across that alligator scene, when it attacks Josie, and pulls her under, and then they manage to save her, and then they kill it, they just unload, like, AKs on it. And then Lena's looking at its teeth and realizing that they're all... spliced weird, that it was a pattern, the concentric circles.
It was a shark,
right? Like it had that weird patterning.
Exactly. So it wasn't actually just an alligator.
Right.
It was something else too.
So, and then obviously the guy getting sliced open, he's got what look like vines
roots or
growing
snakes
through.
Or something.
So that's like a hybrid human plant. And then you've got hybrid animals, hybrid human animals with the spirit of whatever her name is, Cass. So this is, everything's up in the ether. Anything goes in the shimmer. You can get crossed with like a boot.
That's very true. Before we wrap this up, I just wanted to come back to that one moment because you're going back to the whole idea of like love. He has parts of it. He has parts of his memories of her. I think it's very telling, again, and it adds to the significance of that first scene where he enters. He crosses the threshold into their bedroom again, right? We get this so much in so many different scenes throughout this symbolic crossing of the threshold, so to speak. And this was a very important one, I think, because of the setting, because she's essentially trying to erase what was once there. She's painting, right? And as we progress throughout the film, we get these various moments and scenes. First, it starts off very intimate, very loving. It's these flashback memories of the two of them together, right? Slowly becomes something else. And then eventually we get the scene where she's actually cheating on him with someone else. And so it's like this weird dissolution of that throughout that you could say kind of parallels the dissolution of their sort of, it's the fragmentation of their love connection,
right,
so to speak, which is just a very weird. And another one that's just popped in my head right now, just thinking of like the thresholds and like the symbolic gestures behind those and stuff. We got a really important one again with Dr. Ventress crossing the threshold into Lena's room when she becomes sort of a captive, a prisoner, and she wakes up, she's nauseous as hell, so she goes to the bathroom. Yeah. And then you see Dr. Ventress just like observing her, and then she decides to take that very deliberate step into the room, and then it closes behind her, and she's entering Lena's world. That's their first connection. Right. I don't know. I love the way that film is able to do that. You get the physical representations of the symbolic sort of relationships and things that are going on.
No, that is done on purpose too. Right?
Exactly.
Like doorways are portals, are symbolic portals, and like the last name, like you said, totally window,
Ventress,
Ventana.
Yeah, Ventana.
I wonder. Like that's definitely interesting. So before we wrap things up here for Film Friday, we have a promo we want to play for a really good friend of ours and a listener of the show out in Australia, Wesley. And he has a new podcast called CrotchRocket Radio, and it is a sweet show. I've never really been big into motorcycles and bikes, but they've kind of gotten me wanting to be totally. Like they kind of spook me a little bit. I'm a wimp when it comes to riding motorcycles,
me
but
too.
super.
If you're into bikes, man, listen to this.
Definitely, yeah.
It's fun.
They're just getting started. Just went out and bought a mic, and he was asking for us for tips and tricks and things like that. And we're not the biggest show in the world or anything either, but we like to help people get going, and he'll improve. They're improving as they go. So we wanted to give him a little bump here. So go check out CrotchRocket Radio.
Mm-hmm.
Hi, we're CrotchRocket Radio. Do you ever find yourself getting lost in the motorcycle world?
We do.
Yes, we do. Do the hairs on the back of your neck stand up when you hear a motorcycle go past?
It does for us too. And we're here to try and help you deal with this kind of addiction. So if you want to hear the stories from the riders, the racers, and the people with the box parts,
they can turn them into a beautiful masterpiece.
And tune in every fortnight, CrotchRocket Radio.
Download us now.
iTunes,
Spotify,
or wherever you listen to your podcast. Shiny side up, people.
All right, and we're back. So, just as our little conclusion here before we wrap things up, would you recommend this, Andrew? I think you already answered this question, but
definitely would recommend it. Super fun, and it's more hardcore than you expect it to be.
It definitely is. The violence is there, it's rated R, and it's one of those ones again that we're covering. It's going to be explicit just simply because of the content of the film.
Definitely.
And actually, our content was good, right?
I don't think we swore or anything. No, yeah, it should be all right.
Yeah, but anyways, just to reiterate, I guess, before we wrap this one up, again, if anyone has any suggestions that aren't exclusively horror movies or anything like that, I'm into cool stuff. Like, even, we could do, Night Before Christmas or something.
Sure,
or,
for Christmas this year?
Oh, Coraline, that's a really good one.
Definitely.
I don't even know. It doesn't have to be horror. It could be fantasy. It could be adventure. As long as it has some sort of crazy, weird element to it. It's a twist of some sort. We're into it.
Absolutely.
So get at us.
And this one we didn't tie in any specific episode because it kind of crosses over a lot of episodes.
True,
and
actually.
also just the name of the show. Into the Portal.
Yeah.
Into the Shimmer.
Into the Shimmer, into the Portal.
Yeah.
But again, another point actually, now that I'm thinking about it, we really like to keep this show accessible to everyone, including kids. So I apologize, we have actually had moments in the show where it's not family friendly, but we always mark those as explicit so everyone's aware.
Definitely.
But again, I love Film Fridays, and I think kids would love it too. And everyone listening, probably a lot of you have families back at home, and you all like to listen together, perhaps in the car or wherever you listen. And I think it would just be fun to make it more family friendly and inclusive.
Definitely, absolutely, yeah. So shoot those ideas out. We've had a ton of good ones, so keep them coming.
Yeah.
And thank you so much for listening, and we will see you guys again in a couple of days on Sunday.
Sounds good.
This was a podcast from the Podfix Network. You can check out more shows like it at podfixnetwork.com.